Hey, would you like a PDF of all the Old Soul, New Soul podcast episodes since we started the show? Well, it's under the Freebies tab on funastrology.com. Go grab yours now. Welcome to the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast. Thomas Miller, Robert Glasscock, thank you so much for listening. We're so glad you're here, and we're going to talk about something that I'll bet a lot of you have heard about, but maybe not know the full scope of what it is. We're talking about not a planet. You can't fly one of Elon Musk's rockets to it. You can't land on it. You can't take pictures of it. It's the part of fortune. Robert, is that my rabbit's foot in the chart?
It's everybody's rabbit foot without having to kill a rabbit.
Well, that's good.
The part of fortune is one of the old Arabic parts. The Arabian astrologers back in the day came up with something like 87 different parts. The part of sickness, the part of death, the part of marriage, the part of shipwreck. I mean, just on and on. But the part of fortune is the one that most, if not many astrologers still use today. It's calculated from the positions of the sun, the moon, and the ascendant. So those are the most personal, fastest moving points in the chart. And you need to rectify a chart to do this, because if your ascendant is off by 1 degree or 2 degrees, which means your birth time is off by 4 or 8 minutes, the part of fortune will be off. So you need to have a fairly secure feeling that your time of birth is accurate. We've talked about rectification before. It's not that hard. But when you have that, and the calculations are different for a day birth and a night birth, and most computer programs today will calculate that for you. The ascendant plus sun minus moon, those calculations, you can find them in the books. But what this is, the part of fortune, is a synthesis of the sun, the moon, and the ascendant, the most personal points in the horoscope. So the part of fortune represents a holistic point, a synthesis of you in one point. And it is fantastically valuable to know where that part of fortune is by sign and by house, because those matters, the sign that is ruled by it and the house that it is ruled, occupies, and the aspects made to it will tend to indicate this is a point in the chart and therefore in your life where you are most complete and whole. And therefore, according to the old Arabic astrologers, the most likely to be successful. So that's why they called it the part of fortune. And indeed, if you can consciously develop that part of fortune and your understanding of it in your chart, you can turn that house, those house matters and the sign matters and the aspects made to that part of fortune into success in your life. Sometimes that will be success as a person and internally, but it often does translate literally into success in the workaday world. So it's a wonderful point to know. And I use it in everybody's chart, whether I've rectified it or not, because I don't have time to rectify everybody's chart, so you just have to assume that their time of birth is pretty correct, unless they want it rectified, which takes a bit of time. But even if it's not exact to the exact degree, you can still glean a lot of very valuable information from it, because it is where you come together with yourself, your sun, your moon. That's the annual cycle of the sun, the monthly cycle of the moon, and the diurnal or daily cycle of the ascendant, all synthesized in one point at your birth. So it's there for life. And part of fortune also advances by solar arcs. So it's a great point to study and get information from that's invaluable, and you won't find it in any other point in the horoscope, because it's unique in this idea of bringing together the meanings of your sun, moon, and the ascendant all in one invaluable point.
Okay, excellent. Let's take a couple of examples. And because we haven't pulled a notable person's chart, we're going to go with 2 notable people to this podcast, you and me. Let's do a couple of minutes on each of us. How about? So I've put my chart up. These will both be in the show notes, my chart and Robert's chart. And I have a 9-degree Cancer in the first house, part of fortune. And this is interesting because your part of fortune is on the other side of the chart. So Let's talk about this one for a couple of minutes, and then we'll pop your chart up and talk about yours.
All right, so your part of fortune, figure it out. It's in the first decade of Cancer, which is the Cancer decade. It is also in the Libra duad of Cancer. It's in your first house. So automatically, anybody with the part of fortune in the first house, for starters, their own physical presence is crucial to their success in life. Their appearance, their personality, how they present themselves, how they look. In your case, Gemini rising, of communications, what they say, how they think, how they connect with other people, the idea of connectingness in Gemini. But it's the personality itself and the physical presence that is key to success. And what you have to offer people is a feeling of emotional familiarity and security. You make people feel like they are part of your family and you are part of theirs. The way you work in life is coming from a place of Cancerian security, and this is all very natural. You don't have to think about it. You tend to treat everybody as if they were family. Does this make sense to you? I mean, I've felt this from you.
It does, but it's undeveloped. Yeah.
Now, what do you mean? What do you mean undeveloped?
Well, number one, I don't believe it as much because I've struggled with family stuff so much. So I would say to myself, how could I be a family, a security?
All right. Well, now you're getting into aspects to the part of fortune, namely from the oppositions of your nodes to squaring. It's in a T-square.
Yeah, exactly.
With your nodes. But given the duad of your part of fortune, which is Libra, you've been married twice. So you were absolutely acting this. And marriage for you felt like it should bring you what you want, security and family. And you've had children and now grandchildren. So all of that's inherent in that. Now, is it easy? No, because of the nodes, especially they are angular and in your 4th and 10th house. So there's some conflict there. But on a deeper level, that that part of fortune trines all of your Scorpio planets.
Yeah, the Marsan tune.
So from a transformational aspect, which is what you're here to do as a Scorpio, it's a fascinating part of fortune because it means that you will turn even tragedies into a higher understanding that increases your own success in life. And maybe that means not necessarily leaving a family, but it means rising above the family at birth to something greater and more transformative, which is why you ultimately, I think, got into metaphysics and astrology, which you have your sun conjunct Neptune just like I do. And Neptune, along with Uranus, happens to rule astrology and metaphysics. And it's very frequent, Thomas, that people that get into metaphysics and astrology ultimately outgrow their families, unless the family, and this is rare. In fact, I've only known one couple in my whole life where the husband and wife were equally, truly metaphysical. It's usually the woman. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the man. So mostly people that get into this field find the internal reality of metaphysics and what it's doing for them in terms of bringing them self-awareness and self-development and self-realization. They find all of that so compelling that they tend to evolve in a direction that more mundane people who are really more preoccupied with the mundane realities of living and conforming and following conventionality and so on do not. So they begin to feel different from everybody else. And that can, in some situations, make them feel lonely. It doesn't me. It makes me feel much more connected, but it does make me less interested in people who are totally preoccupied with matters that I feel I've outgrown. And this is the same that's true for you. But in terms of success in this life, that part of fortune in Cancer and the summation of your sun, which is your fifth house, and your moon, which is both fourth house and fifth house because it's within 5 degrees of your fifth house, synthesizing that and your sun, moon, and ascendant, that's Scorpio, Libra, and Gemini, all in this one symbol in your first house. So it means your personality and your looks and the way that you deliver. And people with this don't have to be classically handsome. I mean, you're a great looking guy, but you don't have to be a beautiful woman or a movie star handsome man. But you have a certain charisma that people pick up on, which is very familial. They feel comfortable with you and they feel protected by you because they can sense that what you have to offer, your part of fortune in Cancer rising, is a sense of nourishing and caring. And that's what you have to offer. And Cancer is the old Rockefeller sign, my friend, back in the day. The original Rockefeller was a Cancer. So it is certainly a sign of acquiring more and more security, spiritual first and metaphysical, and then secondarily financial, because it reflects, money reflects values. But this is a tremendously loving part of fortune in the first house. And so a lot of people wish they had it there.
Wow. That's so interesting. And one of the reasons why I so want to, I guess maybe my Saturn legacy would be to leave a long trail of astrological knowledge behind, because I wasn't raised in an environment where, some people were exposed to astrology as children. Their mom taught them, or their grandmother taught them, or it was just in their home, or they found it on their own early. Think of Roseanne Cash and that story of her sitting on her bed as a teenager reading an astrology book, and Johnny walks in and says, "What are you reading?" She shows it to him, says, "It's a book on astrology." She said, "You probably don't believe in this, do you?" And he said, "No, I don't, but I think you should learn everything you can about it."
Good for him.
Yeah. But, I first cracked open a microphone at a radio station when I was 19. 2 years later, I was hired to do the 6 and 10 news at an ABC television station, and I didn't believe in myself. And nobody in my family advised me to stay with it. And I lost an entire career that I could have had and been very successful, I have no doubt, in broadcasting if I had just stayed in that path. And that was back when that form of journalism was still a pretty good career, So, understanding this is so important. Hey, let's take a look at yours real quick here. You have also in Cancer, just on the other side of the chart. It's in the 6th house at 4 degrees.
So it's the same thing. And it's something I've had to learn by nature. And when I was younger, I think, I was not a particularly caring, emotionally caring person. I cared about myself, but caring for other people emotionally, I've always been a Libra. I'm social and have always had many friends and many loved ones. And I've always been charming, as they say about Libra, and personal and all of that. But emotionally, it's something I have had to learn. And thank God I found this when I did, or it found me. Because I also have Saturn in Cancer. And Saturn in Cancer is in a T-square with my sun and moon and so on. So I was aware, certainly really around the age of 10, which is Saturn's degree, that I didn't share the same values as my family, as my parents. But I became aware, starting at age 10, that my values and my interests were not going to be supported by them or taken seriously by them. And not only that, but the entire community where I lived, because I was very lucky to be able to travel. So I became aware very young, and I was very self-protective. I had to be. Until I got into astrology. And then I'm assuming I would have developed this maybe without it. I doubt that, though. But realizing that my part of fortune is in Cancer, which, like you, is about caring and nourishing and nurturing, in my 6th house of work. And I hope that that's what I do for other people as an astrologer. Saturn in the seventh house is actually, it's accidentally exalted in that house. And Saturn in Cancer by birth says that you have your hardest lessons to learn in connection with what a home and family are. And I did. I'm my own home and family ultimately now, and that's great with me. But Saturn in Cancer is also a terrific position for any type of counselor. It can be a lawyer, it can be a doctor, it can be an astrologer. It's a great position for that. And of course, Saturn is trying to buy my Venus and sextile by my Jupiter and so on. So that's all worked out. But that part of fortune in the sixth, and the main reason that I discovered and think this position is so important, look where it is, Thomas. It's in my sixth house, not only of work and occupation, but of health. Health. Caring for my health. My sixth house. I was raised, as everybody knows, by alcoholics, going not just in my dad, but going back generations, and certainly in my relatives. So I was raised to be a drinker and a smoker. And when I got into this, and the very first old book that I got and read said, you need to watch out for drugs and alcohol and cigarette, all of that stuff. I have Gemini on the sixth house, smoking. Not good. So ultimately and what I had to learn was to care for myself, because I was not encouraged to do that. I was encouraged to, much like you, I think, encouraged to conform to what my family wanted me to be and do. But I didn't want to. I didn't like it. I didn't like what they wanted me to be. But that's a big part of that part of fortune there. And through work, now it's in the sixth house, it's not in the 10th. So the part of fortune in its monetary connotation, it could be in a better place than that. But what it does promise is it's the Virgo house. And I have Jupiter in Virgo as well. And both of those, Virgo is a sign that grows incrementally rather than in leaps and bounds like some people do. Some people make a lot of money all at once. I tend to do it day by day, step by step, step by step. And that's been true for me. But the real key to my part of fortune is learning, unlike you, your part of fortune is in your personality and just your physical presence. With me, it's been learning to nurture and nourish myself. And so I found it through studying astrology and metaphysics, which of course put you in touch with the almighty, the all that is. It's an incredible experience. And in caring for my own health, I just extend that to everybody that I read for. And I do read. When I'm looking at people's charts, I tend to put myself in their situation. If I had this chart in this situation, here's what I would want to know.
You know, it's interesting how we are all on our paths and how that shows it so dramatically. That is life-changing, fascinating. Okay, Robert, you might get your calendar clear, because I remember when we did those 2 sessions on the nodes of the moon, you remember, and you said that your doorbell rang quite a bit for readings about their nodes. You better get ready again. It might be coming for the part of fortune. People are going to probably want to know that about them. So thank you for giving us that information. And where you would find that direct email to get in touch with Robert is in the show notes. We've got our show log that is available now of all the titles of all the episodes. We really appreciate good Apple reviews. It just helps elevate us and keep us up in that elite range of the top podcasts on Apple if you're an Apple user. And Kristen's Discord channel is in there as well if you'd like to continue this conversation in various ways. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time on the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast with Robert Glasscock.